Ever heard that saying, too wild to be true? Well, buckle up because today we're doing a deep dive on the Burning Sun scandal. And let me tell you, this K-pop story is wilder than any fiction I've come across.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a story that really gripped South Korea, not just because it involved big celebrities, but because it exposed some really unsettling truths about power dynamics and, well, just how far some people will go to hide the truth.
Exactly. We're working with some excerpts from a Billboard article, which does a fantastic job of piecing together this really complex timeline. So to set the scene for our listeners, picture this. Seoul's hottest nightclub. We're talking exclusive clientele, the works. And right at the center of it all is K-pop star Seungri, who some even called Korea's Great Gatsby. He was a partial owner of this place, Burning Sun, and let me tell you, it was the place to be seen.
And this is where things take a dark turn. What begins with an assault allegation quickly spirals into accusations of hidden cameras, prostitution rings, you name it. It's like a domino effect. And it doesn't just implicate Seungri, but other big K-pop stars, and even some high-ranking officials.
And if that's not crazy enough, imagine leaked chat logs, like something straight out of a spy movie, just blowing the whole thing wide open. And we're not talking about just any messages. These were from Talk, which is basically Korea's version of WhatsApp. So yeah, talk about a digital smoking gun.
You know, it's really important to highlight the role investigative journalism played in all of this. News outlets, especially one called SBS Funny, they were relentless in digging up information and pushing for accountability. This wasn't just tabloid fodder, it became a battle for transparency in a system that often protects the powerful.
Okay, so let's untangle this web, starting right at the beginning. January 2019, a man is assaulted at Burning Sun. His name is Kim Sang-kyo, and he becomes a really key figure in exposing what was going on behind the scenes.
And you see, this is where that whole thing about powerful figures controlling the narrative comes into play. Burning Sun's management immediately goes on the defensive, claiming this Kim guy was harassing women and that Seungri wasn't even there. But, as we'll see, the truth has a way of coming out.
This is where those Talk messages you mentioned, well, they become key, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. See, these messages, they weren't just about, planning parties or casual chit-chat. They paint a much darker picture, allegedly revealing a disturbing pattern of behavior.
Okay, describing how. Give us the details.
Well, in one chat going back to 2015, Seungri appears to be discussing bribing potential investors, and get this, with prostitutes. And if that wasn't enough, the messages hint at a network of people who could, let's say, make problems disappear, suggesting a very troubling connection to corrupt police officials.
So we're not just talking about potential crimes happening, but a system designed to cover them up.
Exactly. And this is a big reason why the public outrage was so intense. Remember, this was all playing out against the backdrop of South Korea's very hierarchical society. The idea that these powerful figures were abusing their influence, potentially silencing victims, it was infuriating to a lot of people.
It's like the scandal just kept peeling back these layers of unsettling truths.
Precisely. And as the investigation deepens, another K-pop star, Young, gets dragged into the spotlight.
Ah, yes, Young Junyoung. This is where the hidden camera part of the scandal really comes into play, right?
Sadly, yes. This is where things take an even darker turn. News broke that Young had allegedly been secretly filming women without their consent, and even worse, sharing those videos in chat rooms with other celebrities.
Hold on, we're not talking about some, harmless prank gone wrong here, are we?
Absolutely not. These were crimes with very real victims whose privacy and dignity were violated in the most horrific way. The fact that these acts were allegedly shared, even boasted about in these chat rooms, it's deeply disturbing. It speaks to a culture that too often normalizes the exploitation of women.
It's just heartbreaking to think about the impact this had on the victims.
It shook South Korea to its core. It forced the nation to confront this uncomfortable reality of spy cam crimes, which, sadly, were far more prevalent than many people realized.
And this is where the Burning Sun scandal becomes more than just celebrity gossip, right? It becomes this catalyst for a much larger conversation about misogyny, abuse of power, and the systems that allow these things to flourish.
Exactly. This wasn't about one nightclub or a handful of celebrities. It became a lightning rod for a movement demanding justice and accountability.
So how did the authorities respond to this growing pressure?
Well, the pressure was immense. Even Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president at the time, weighed in, stating that if the truth wasn't revealed, it couldn't be considered a just society.
Wow, when the president gets involved, you know it's serious. So the investigation intensifies. What happens next?
Well, as you can imagine, this scandal continues to pull more people into its orbit, including high-ranking police officers who were allegedly connected to those involved.
I remember reading about a Superintendent Yoon.
Yes, Superintendent Yoon admitted to knowing Yoo In-suk, a central figure in the Burning Sun scandal and a member of that infamous chat room.
Right.
This revelation just fueled suspicions of a cover-up and really deepened that public distrust in the authorities.
It's amazing how one incident, right, could unravel so many lives and expose such a complicated network of power and corruption.
It is. It's a stark reminder that behind the glamour, behind the bright lights, there are often very dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. And sometimes, all it takes is one crack in that facade for the truth to come pouring out.
So we've got this massive scandal, right, rocking the K-pop world, whispers about police involvement, and the public is understandably outraged. What happens to Seungri and Jung Jun-young in all of this?
Well, for Jung Jun-young, things moved pretty swiftly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he confessed to those charges of illegal filming and distributing explicit content.
So there was accountability. What were the consequences for her?
Oh, absolutely. He was arrested, charged, and ultimately sentenced to prison for his crimes.
Which, I mean, feels like a small victory considering the sheer scale of this whole scandal.
It was a small victory, but a significant one. It sent a message, that this kind of blatant violation of privacy and consent, it wouldn't be tolerated. However, Seungri's story, well, that was far from over.
Right, because even though he was basically at the center of this storm, he maintained his innocence on a lot of the charges, didn't he?
Exactly. He denied those accusations, tried to distance himself from Burning Sun altogether, even claimed he was totally unaware of any illegal activities happening there.
But you know what they say? If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck.
And those Kakao Talk messages, well, those really came back to haunt him, didn't they?
For sure. Those messages, they became central to the prosecution's case. I mean, they directly contradicted his claims,
Yeah.
right? And suggested he was much more deeply involved in those alleged crimes than he let on.
It's true what they say. The digital trail can be hard to erase, especially when it paints such an incriminating picture.
It really highlights the power of investigative journalism, to bring this kind of stuff to light.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the importance of a free press and, honestly, the courage of whistleblowers who risk everything to expose the truth.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final verdict? What ended up happening to Seungri?
Well, after a long and complicated legal battle with plenty of twists and turns, Seungri was found guilty on several charges. Embezzlement, procuring prostitution, the list goes on.
Wow. So justice was served in the end?
To a degree, yes. He did face legal consequences for his actions, but the Burning Sun scandal, it left a mark on South Korean society that goes far beyond the individuals involved.
What would you say was the most significant takeaway from all of this?
For me, it exposed the underbelly of an industry often shielded by wealth and glamour. It forced a national conversation, a really uncomfortable one, about the abuse of power, the culture of silence, and the urgent need for change.
It's a reminder that we can't just scratch the surface, right? We have to be willing to dig deeper, ask those tough questions, and demand accountability, even from those we might admire.
And just as importantly, we have to believe and support those courageous enough to speak out against injustice, because their voices have the power to spark real change.
As we close the book on this deep dive into the Burning Sun scandal, it leaves us with a lot to think about. It's a story of excess, of betrayal, and ultimately the fight for justice. And it begs the question, what other stories are out there waiting to be told? And are we listening?